The annual RedEx Reliability Trial is Australia's richest and most spectacular motorsport event. Competitors drive ordinary cars, just like those you'll see on any road any day, on a long, hard test of driving skill and reliability. They must drive to an exact schedule, which calls for high average speeds, over all types of roads, from smooth highways to rough outback tracks. They pass from cool spring weather in Sydney to the heat of tropical Darwin and back to the Southern Alps, where it's still midwinter. This year, 183 drivers competed for prizes valued at over £10,000. The trial was rougher, faster, and 900 miles longer than last year. It lasted 3 weeks, and those who completed the course travelled over 10,500 miles right round the continent of Australia. Months of organisation go into making a RedEx trial. The routes must be surveyed, and the report, spoken into a tape recorder during the actual survey, presented to the trials committee. Regulations are drawn up, discussed and examined closely for loopholes. And then details of the trial are published and entries begin to arrive from all over Australia. A week before the starting day, scrutineering begins. Cars arrive at a big Sydney engineering works for inspection by skilled engineers. Most of them are ordinary family saloons, and scrutineers make sure all parts are absolutely standard. Vital parts, such as springs and differential housings, which cannot be replaced during the trial without loss of points, are coated with radioactive paint to be tested with a Geiger counter afterwards. Well-known technical advisor Dr. Beach comes along every year to give competitors advice. Compulsory equipment includes emergency rations for each crew member for at least a week. At scrutineering, competitors who went last year meet each other again. Newcomers make new friends and listen to advice from the old hands. It's a chance to size up the opposition too and find out how other people have prepared for the journey. At the start, this most attractive veteran of the last 2 RedEx trials, Mrs. Mary McLaughlin, signs autographs for small boys, while her husband, Bill, is interviewed by a radio newsreel man. Tom Farrell and John Jones from the Sydney Daily Telegraph get in some last-minute study. Mrs. Shepherd, wife of the founder of the trial, flags out number 1, a Vanguard driven by A.W. Stanfield of Mascot, New South Wales. And then the cars begin to leave at 2-minute intervals. Famous radio man Jack Davey couldn't compete this year, but he came along to wave the boys goodbye. And there goes Ken Tubman, winner of the 1953 trial. Last year, his car retired at Catherine. This year, he drives a Vanguard, which was won in a competition by a man who's never claimed it. Many cars are painted vivid colors, and most are covered with sign writing. Practically anything you could think of is advertised on some car somewhere in the trial. One features bubble gum, another a super rat trap, while a third urges everyone to buy somebody's sensational new brassieres. Beards are amazingly plentiful this year. At least half a dozen have passed through so far, with less than a quarter of the field away. Jack Murray, who won the trial last year, comes to the line with the same car full of balloons. For the children, he says. His famous 1948 Ford V8 attracts a lot of attention. And the car following Murray is the Vanguard Spacemaster, driven by Eric Nelson and Neville Vale of New South Wales. There are only 3 sports cars in the trial, and 2 of them are MGs. Peter Antill, motoring editor of the Sydney Daily Telegraph, has been well up with the leaders in the last 2 trials. This year, he again drives a Plymouth Savoy and is one of the favorites. This Triumph TR2 is the fastest car in the trial, with a top speed of well over 100 miles an hour. By nightfall, the last cars leave the line, but already the leaders are near Tamworth, almost 300 miles away. In the early morning, the cars pass through the township of Tweed Heads and across the Tweed River, just south of the Queensland border. It's been an easy run from Sydney, on good roads all the way, but already 27 cars have lost points and 2 are right out altogether. One hit a bridge in dust and overturned, was badly damaged and the crew went to hospital. The other car withdrew with serious engine trouble at Glen Innes. Everyone has maintained high average speeds. Most cars have been cruising at between 50 and 60 miles an hour on these smooth bitumen highways. So they're well ahead of schedule as they cross the border into Queensland. And here's Southport, Queensland's summer playground, where crews will have a 15-hour rest. It wasn't swimming weather when they left Sydney yesterday, but here, over 600 miles closer to the equator, a swim is the first thing nearly everyone looks forward to. Although it's still early morning, the friendly Queenslanders line the streets of Southport to give crews a big welcome. Points are lost at the rate of 1 a minute for late or early arrival at a control point. To avoid arguments, the exact time of checking in is punched on each competitor's control card by an electric time clock. At Southport, the cars are parked in the local showground and competitors sleep at a nearby hostel. But the rest at Southport is soon over and cars head further north toward Rockhampton. The roads are still quite good. So far, this trial is as easy as a holiday jaunt and just as pleasant. A few miles before Rockhampton, the cars pass this sign, which tells them they're out of the temperate zone and into the tropics. Rockhampton homes are built on stilts. It keeps white ants at a safe distance and is very much cooler in summer. Ken Tubman is first into Rockhampton control with no points lost. At this stage, there are still 122 competitors with clean sheets, including Jack Murray, Eric Nilsson, and 2 little Volkswagens driven by Eddie Perkins and Laurie Whitehead. 6 more cars have withdrawn from the trial. Competitors who are running early get some quick servicing done before checking in. Some change their tires. These specially treaded sand tires can help you through tough spots where extra traction is needed. They'll be useful on the roads that lie ahead. It's easy going for the first 60 miles out of Rockhampton, but then the Marlborough Arena section begins. This is 144 miles of road, just 2 rough, dusty wheel tracks winding in and out of trees and boulders. In it, there are 128 creek crossings and 32 wooden cattle grids that can collapse without warning beneath a fast-driven car. The average speed set down for the section is an almost impossible 43 miles an hour. Some drivers decide to get through as quickly as possible and run the risk of structural damage. Others are more cautious. They think it's wiser to lose a few points for being late at control rather than chance doing damage which will cost them hundreds of points at the final scrutineering. Everyone drives to his own plan, and at this stage, no one can tell whose theories are right. In country like this, you must have a navigator who can pinpoint your position, tell you exactly when the bad crossings and stock ramps are due to come up. Otherwise, accidents can happen very quickly. This crossing looks bad, but it's even worse when the stones are hidden by water. Hit one just a little too fast and you're right out of the trial. Eric Nelson, driving a Vanguard, has given everyone a lesson in tactics in this section. He arrived early at Marlborough Control and sacrificed 5 points. But this put him at the head of the field. A big advantage here, where the dust from the car ahead can blind you and slow your speed down to a crawl. A few cars behind Nelson at Marlborough was Jellic Knight Jack Murray, last year's winner. Murray set off grimly determined to catch Nelson and beat him into Serena. Halfway through the 144-mile section, Nelson is still ahead, keeping to the 43-mile-an-hour average by very hard driving. But right behind him is Murray in the big grey Ford. For mile after mile, he sits a few hundred yards behind, pushing Nelson to his limit. They force their cars along this rough bush track, up and down steep creek crossings, at a shattering pace. Both cars take a terrific battering as Nelson fights to keep the lead. The really big cars make heavy going of this twisty track. They're at a real disadvantage here, and drivers work very hard to keep up the pace. This driver's been caught before. He treats his crossings with respect and proceeds with caution. The locals use cars specially designed for this type of country, Model T Fords. There's one advantage about being well back in the field. If you come to a place like this and there's no one else stuck in the middle, you can assume it's safe to go through. Carl Kennedy, driving Peugeot number 43, treats the rough going with respect. He wants to keep his car in good condition for the long run ahead. Veteran driver Frank Kleinig always travels fast. His Volkswagen is pushed to its limit along the dusty track. This truck, following the trial for a newspaper, has minor trouble. The MG ran into a gutter fast. A stone flew up and fractured the radiator. Only a complete replacement can fix it, so he's right out of the trial. A badly battered field checks in at Serena. 20 cars are right out, and many more have been seriously damaged. Everyone has lost points. Eric Nelson has done the impossible and got through on time, but he's down the 5 points he gave away at Marlborough. Jack Murray kept with him for most of the way and even looked like getting in early, but a blowout robbed him of his position. He now lies equal sixth with 26 points lost. Serena Control is only a time check, and in a few minutes cars are on their way again to Cairns. The roads are good and average is easy to keep to. An occasional cattle grid and some dust are the only hazards. But on this long, fast run, damage done in the Serena section begins to show up, and several cars can't continue. These two are typical. It'll take them some time to get going again. Level crossings are one of the local hazards. Trains laden with sugarcane come puffing out from behind bushes in the most unexpected places, and you've got to watch them very carefully. About a mile off the route is the township of Bowen. Some competitors running early make a slight deviation for fuel and food. This Holden calls it a day. He rolled over on the Serena section and tried to continue, but there's too much wrong with the car to risk the lonely trip ahead, so he returns to Sydney. These people drove from a cattle station nearly 100 miles away to watch the trial go past. Normally, there wouldn't be 100 cars along this road in a month. Today, they'll see 120 go by in 4 hours. "448 miles west of Cairns is Hughenden, where there's a 2-minute time check. Roads have not been good, and high average speeds don't permit mistakes in driving or navigation. When you're running late, every second seems to count, even though you've probably lost 500 points already. Now's the time to search for rattles. Daredevil Bill McLaughlin, despite the pounding, is quite satisfied with what he saw under that custom line. A flat battery is a very small problem on a RedEx trial. There's always a band of willing helpers to get you rolling again. From Hughenden to Julia Creek, the road is bad and the average speed high, so it pays to be careful. It's 50 miles to the nearest garage. This car rolled over 4 times when it struck a large rock. Other competitors stopped and helped the crew get it upright again. A new stub axle was raced out from the nearest town. They fitted it on and were soon underway, determined to finish the trial. At Julia Creek, the youngsters have a field day. They wait in the main street to cheer each car as it arrives and secure every possible autograph. Some go even further. They organize their own trial with controls, control officials, and even RedEx stickers. In this one, there's no penalty for body damage, and if anyone gets in your way, you're entitled to ram his vehicle as hard as you like, provided, of course, that your own front suspension is tough enough to take it. Here, crews stop to refresh themselves and prepare their cars for the hard run through Duchess to Mount Isa. Everyone will have to drive the last 60 miles into Mount Isa in darkness, one of the roughest pieces of road in the whole trial. At this stage, Eric Nelson, who led the field from Serena, is right out of the trial. His radiator was smashed beyond repair when he hit a kangaroo. Jack Murray has lost another 9 points, total 35, and Victorian Laurie Whitehead leads in a little German Volkswagen. Only another 230 miles to go to Mount Isa and 18 hours rest. Although the last car was due into Mount Isa at 11:30 p.m. last night, stragglers are still arriving. 19 cars are definitely out, hopeless wrecks. Many more are damaged but still struggling on. Scrutineer Ron Ward makes a lightning raid, penalizing cars for damage. For some drivers, this is the final blow. A mark like this costs 250 points. If you've been going well, it can be heartbreaking. From Mount Isa, it's straight going all the way to Darwin on a perfect bitumen road laid down by the Americans during the war. The only hazards are boredom and at night wandering animals. The cars race westward, past the Northern Territory border sign, into a setting sun. Early cars arrived at Tennant's Creek in darkness, but late arrivals book in up to 9 in the morning. The 1-hour break relieves the monotony of this 1,000-mile drive along the straight, smooth highway. Tennant's Creek is a mining township 600 miles from Darwin and 500 miles from Mount Isa, right in the middle of the lonely Northern Territory. This Holden belongs to the Australian Women's Weekly team. They're all girls, and they've been driving as hard as the experts, despite some troubles which have cost them 1,049 points to date. And then the cars set off, past the memorials of Flynn of the Inland, up the long bitumen to Darwin. With no need for a navigator, only the driver stays awake. Other crew members can sleep in comfort as the car rolls smoothly along this perfect road. Clerk of the course, Bill Nunn, checks cars at Darwin to make sure they're roadworthy. Despite its appearance, this Zephyr, which rolled just before Julia Creek, passed with flying colors. It has amassed 1,082 points so far, but the crew are quite sure they'll get back to Sydney in one piece. The 27-hour rest at Darwin gives everyone a chance to get things straight, including the organizers. Back at the Central Control Room in Sydney, complete scores, including damage penalties, are added up. Laurie Whitehead's Volkswagen is still in the lead, with Carl Kennedy in a Peugeot second and Eddie Perkins' Volkswagen third. And the RedEx Trial is on the front pages of newspapers all over Australia. Nowhere else in the world has a motorsport event so completely captured the imagination of the general public. Out of Darwin, you have a short run on bitumen to Catherine, and then you're in the rough again. The country opens up onto the sweeping grass-covered plains of Western Australia. The road is a single dusty track. At times, there isn't a tree to be seen. Just miles of tufty grass stretching out to an unbroken horizon. You must take the road slowly. The thick talcum-fine dust conceals huge potholes and jagged rocks. The cars arrive at Fitzroy Crossing during the night. There are no beds for crews here. You just sleep out under the stars. 94 cars left Darwin yesterday. 74 have booked in at Fitzroy Crossing. The other 20 are bogged somewhere along that rough 1,300 miles of road. From Fitzroy Crossing, the cars head off down the Western Australian coast to Perth. An Aboriginal drover is the only person you'll meet for hours. He guides the cattle well off the road to let the cars go past. Animals are startled and leap away as the cars roar by. Kangaroos and emus are hazards by night when they're blinded by your headlights, but during the day they move off rapidly before you can get near them. From Perth, you turn east for the first time since leaving Sydney over a fortnight ago and start the run across the vast Nullarbor Plains. The average speed set is 46 miles an hour for the 1,272 miles to Ceduna. But the dirt road is in quite good condition and no one should strike trouble. This season has been very good right through the Northern Territory and the West. For thousands of miles, the normally dried brown plains are covered in flowers. The bright red of the Sturt pea mingles with the purple of the Patterson's curse to form an incredibly colorful sight. Hidden beneath the flowers are the lizards. They're probably wondering what all the noise is about. And although they look ferocious, they only eat flies. As the cars reach more populated areas, the navigator must start work in earnest. It's his job to guide the car around the right corner when there is a choice of roads. He must also make sure average speed is being maintained. And he must be able to accurately pinpoint the car's position at any time. Many trials are won and lost from the navigator's seat. The high-speed run across the Nullarbor is ending, and the cars approach Adelaide. The Volkswagens of Whitehead and Perkins are leading. Jack Murray has jumped from 6th position to 3rd. Only 62 of the original 183 entrants now remain in the field. Few will get through scrutineering without points losses. Already it's claimed that the leading Volkswagens have suffered structural damage that could cost them both 500 points, although they look as if they've just come off the showroom floor. At Adelaide Control, an enterprising electric razor firm does big business with free shows for all crews. From Adelaide, it's an easy run up the Barossa Valley to Broken Hill on fast dirt roads all the way. And although some rain has fallen, it's not enough to cause trouble. On the second leg of this section, from Broken Hill to Mildura, it's a different story. The rain has kept on, turning the road into a greasy quagmire. The trip becomes a succession of touch-and-go slides and spins as drivers race against the clock. If you leave the road in conditions like this, you sink right up to your hubcaps in the soft red mud, and it takes you hours to get out. The bridge across the Murray River is a welcome sight. Mildura is only a few minutes away now. The mud has made averages hard to maintain, and nearly everyone hurries into Mildura Control. But Laurie Whitehead in Volkswagen number 90 has taken it in his stride. He's 5 minutes ahead of time. But this is only a 2-minute time check, and they're soon off again on the next leg to Horsham. This is a quick, easy run on good dirt and bitumen roads. It's not raining now, although there is still some mud about. Volkswagens were one of the few makes of cars that could get service from one end of the country to the other. Outside Horsham, the local dealer waits to give them a friendly hand. And here's John LaFoe in R.S. Upton's Vanguard. He's one of the most spectacular drivers in the trial and gets a big welcome. Everyone makes Horsham on time. Those who are early fill up their cars for the run to Mount Gambier before checking in at control. The back of this Plymouth Savoy, driven by Peter Antle, is badly battered. He stopped to open a gate. A Vanguard driven by George Roberts was coming along behind at 70 miles an hour. Crowds flock to the control point at Mount Gambier to see the cars arrive. Here, crews will have an 18-hour rest. There doesn't appear to be any further need for the emergency rations, so Bill McLaughlin, his wife Mari, Andre Valinsky, the Namco driver, and Jack Murray open them up and polish them off. Unofficial scrutineers give this Ford V8 a very thorough going over. At each successive control, the parking area begins to look more and more like a thriving motor wrecking establishment as body damage grows. The brothers, Jack and Ray Murray, repacked the faithful Ford V8. With a little luck in the last rough section, they could still come out the winners. Refreshed by the 18-hour break, drivers look forward to the run to Melbourne, on good roads all the way. There they will have another 16-hour rest after driving for only 7 hours. No one should lose points on this part of the journey. Where the crowd is thickest, the bends are sharp. Wise drivers throttle back for well-populated corners. Some rain has fallen, and although road surfaces are not affected, there is a real danger from wet ignition. If you hit a puddle at the wrong angle and soak your distributor, it could hold you up for hours. There are only 65 cars left in the trial. Nearly two-thirds of the original field is scattered round the route, waiting for parts, trying to do major overhauls under the most primitive conditions, and nursing their sick and battered cars slowly home. Everywhere along the road, groups of people from nearby farms have gathered to watch the trial go by. Although this farmer couldn't have heard about it at all. He's trying to move his cows along the road at a most difficult time. The moment the children have been waiting for, Jack Murray and his balloons. Just around the bend is a policeman waiting for Mr. Murray. This looks like a most unhappy situation, but we understand the officer just wants an autograph for his young son. It's Saturday morning in Melbourne, and the last full day of the RedEx trial has begun. This afternoon at 1:52, the first car leaves on the final leg of the journey. Here the cars are parked undercover for the first time in the Royal Automobile Club's building. Over 250,000 people welcomed competitors into control last night, and Melbourne man Laurie Whitehead, who still leads, was mobbed by fans. Free soup is distributed to everyone, and Queenslander Keith Fallon finds it just the thing to keep out the cold of Melbourne's weather. At 1:52, the navigator of the first car punches his control card. The field has been reshuffled here, and it's actually car number 6, driven by Rex Parkinson of South Australia, which is first to leave. President of the Royal Automobile Club of Victoria, Mr. C.E. Clements, shakes hands and flags him away. Thousands of people crowd round the control point. Tens of thousands more are packed in a solid, unbroken mass along both sides of the road for miles out of Melbourne. This last section is along back roads to Corryong, on the border of New South Wales and Victoria, then over the Southern Alps to Canberra, the federal capital, and back to Sydney on the Hume Highway. Weekend traffic and the tremendous crowd slow down the cars. The first 15 miles out of Melbourne takes everyone well over an hour. Now the country opens up and everyone drives faster. They make up time on the good road so they can reduce speed when the going gets rougher. But the leading Volkswagens seem to go faster and harder than anyone else. This last section means a lot to them, and Eddie Perkins slides his little car into one corner, corrects and slides it through the next without lifting his foot a fraction. This winter has been unseasonably warm. There's no snow left on the highlands. Driving conditions are easy and pleasant. Near the border, a slight detour is made for the flooded Mitter River, but this doesn't worry anyone very much. As dusk approaches, the road becomes worse. A hard, tiring night drive lies ahead. In the early hours of Sunday morning, the cars pass through the small village of Wee Jasper, and in a slight mist run into the most shocking piece of road in the whole trial. It's not much more than a cattle pad winding across a swamp. Car after car bogs down to the floorboards without a hope of getting through. Jack Murray's hopes fade. He's stuck fast and looks like staying there for hours. Bill McLaughlin organizes crews into a cooperative debogging team, and everyone gets to work. Crews are reconciled to being stuck for a long time, and emergency rations that haven't been needed during the whole trip are broached at last. A hot breakfast does a lot for your morale in a situation like this. There's no further need to hurry. Once you're in this mire, you might as well sit down and eat, because you're right out of the running. People come from everywhere to help the tired, fed-up drivers. Local farmers bring their tractors and Land Rovers. Everyone helps to push and pull the cars through as quickly as possible. Over half the field is stuck fast in this bog. Some have been in it for over 9 hours, gradually sinking deeper and deeper. And even after you've been pulled out by the tractor, the mud still clings. So you have to start cleaning and digging it away from wheels, springs and tail shaft. Now there are no more bad roads. It's good bitumen and concrete all the way. Through a slight mist, the cars run on to Sydney. At Parramatta Park, crowds line the road, eagerly waiting for the winners. The two little Volkswagens, with only 5 points separating them, have beaten the mud and still lie first and second. Clerk of the course, Bill Nunn, greets his daughter, Enid. She was one of the 3 girls who drove the Women's Weekly Holden. Reading from left to right, they are Helen Fitzel, Enid Nunn, and Betty Best. And here is Eddie Perkins of Victoria and his brother Lance. They arrive at the finish before Laurie Whitehead, but actually fill second place. It's a garland of flowers now. They'll collect the hard cash later. Peter Antill manages to coax his battered Plymouth over the line. The whole chassis was badly twisted when Robert's Vanguard hit the car, but Antill has driven it the full 1,800 miles home in that condition. Malcolm Brooks is third place getter. His Vanguard looks as if it could go round again without any trouble. They put Laurie Whitehead and his co-driver Bob Foreman on top of their car so that the crowd could see them. It's a very well-earned win. Both these men have driven in previous RedEx trials, and only bad luck kept them out of a place. This year, they drove carefully and well to pull off this first RedEx win for Victoria.